So we've all heard the stories,
Yeah.
right? You know, the classic crossing over to the other side story.
Oh, sure. The bright light, the tunnel.
Exactly. The tunnel, the overwhelming peace, this feeling of infinite expansion. It's totally a cultural touchstone at this point.
Yeah, everybody kind of knows the tropes.
Right. But the stack of research and notes we are exploring for today's deep dive poses this question that it completely derailed my thinking this week.
It really throws a wrench in things, doesn't it?
It does. It's this paradox that nobody really talks about.
Yeah.
If crossing over is truly this ultimate bliss, right? Like if death is this unconstrained, euphoric expansion into universal love,
Yeah.
then why on earth would anyone volunteer to come back and be crammed into a fragile, anxious, highly limited human body?
I mean, it completely flips the conventional narrative on its head.
Totally.
Because, we spend our entire lives terrified of leaving this physical state. We just assume that the biological body is the ultimate prize of existence.
Right, like this is the main event.
Exactly. But when you start synthesizing the vast emerging data sets on near-death experiences and you combine them with the frameworks of analytic idealism, you are forced to, you have to question the baseline assumptions of what it actually means to be alive.
Yeah.
You have to ask, what is the actual utility of this biological constraint? And honestly, what does the very concept of you really entail?
Exactly. And just to be super clear with you listening right now, this deep dive isn't going to be like a campfire ghost story.
No, definitely not.
And we aren't debating which religion got it right either. We are walking a very rigorous, logical path today.
We really are.
We're moving way past the wild mysticism that usually clouds this topic, and we are certainly moving past the rigid materialist skepticism that just, dismisses anything it can't put in a test tube.
Right, the whole if I can't measure it, it doesn't exist mindset.
Exactly. Because to even begin to answer why an infinite consciousness might deliberately choose to enter a constrained human body, we have to establish what's happening right now at the edge of life and death.
And we are in a really unique historical moment for that.
We really are. The volume of these crossing over stories is just exploding right now.
Well, and what's wild is that these experiences, they aren't new. I mean, they've been recorded for millennia across all these completely disparate cultures.
Right. You see them in ancient texts all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. But the rate at which we are acquiring this data today is currently on this insane exponential curve.
It's a total explosion.
It is. And this explosion is the direct result of a collision between two highly advanced human domains.
Okay, lay it out.
So on one side, you have medical resuscitation technology, and on the other, modern information technology.
Okay, so let's break that down, starting with the medical side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the reality of human existence for the last, 100,000 years.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. If you suffered a catastrophic injury or your heart stopped beating, you simply died.
That was it. The machine broke.
The biological machine failed, and that was the end of the localized story. But over the last few decades, we've just aggressively altered that reality.
Oh, immensely. We aren't just doing basic chest compressions anymore.
No. We are dealing with
highly sophisticated interventions. Doctors routinely drop a patient's core body temperature to essentially freeze their metabolic processes.
which is just wild to think about.
It's basically science fiction. They can drain the blood from your system to perform these complex aortic or neurological surgeries, literally completely flatlining the heart and the brain's electrical activity.
They just completely shut everything off.
Literally everything. It's called deep hypothalamic circulatory arrest. In these states, the brain is completely offline.
Wow.
It is not metabolizing oxygen. It is not firing synapses. By every historical and physiological metric we have, the organism is dead.
Right. Dead.
Yeah, dead. We are pushing the human body deeper into the dying process, holding it in that suspended void and then meticulously pulling it back.
And the thing is, when we pull them back, they aren't coming back empty-handed.
Not at all.
They are bringing back these deeply coherent, transformative narratives, which is where the information technology piece comes in, right?
Exactly.
Because 50 years ago, if you survived a cardiac arrest and had a profound out-of-body experience, who on earth were you going to tell?
Your spouse, maybe?
Maybe. Or your local doctor, who would probably just pat you on the head and prescribe you a sedative.
Yeah, they just say it was a hallucination and move on.
Right. The data was completely siloed. But now, Anyone with a smartphone can instantly connect with a global niche community.
Millions of people.
Exactly. We have massive cross-reference databases of these experiences happening in real time all over the globe.
Yeah.
But this creates a massive friction point, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the definition of clinical death is becoming incredibly nebulous.
It really highlights the core flaw in how we historically categorize mortality. I mean, the materialist framework, which is the dominant paradigm in modern science, it relies on a fixed binary boundary.
The whole light switch analogy.
Exactly. The assumption is that consciousness is solely generated by the physical brain. Therefore, when the brain is irrevocably destroyed, consciousness ceases. Done.
Done deal.
But because we can now pause and reverse the dying process, that boundary is no longer a brick wall. It's this vast gray spectrum.
Okay, so let me stop you right there because I'm going to play the skeptic for a second.
Go for it.
Because this is the immediate hurdle our sources address, and I know you listening are probably thinking this too. The hardcore materialist argument here is actually incredibly straightforward.
It's a very common defense.
Right. They would say, look, if you are sitting in a chair talking to me about seeing a tunnel of light, then by definition, your brain was not fully dead.
Right.
They'd say your synapses were just misfiring while the brain was starved of oxygen. It's basically just a biological hallucination produced by a dying organ. No different from a really vivid dream.
You didn't go to the afterlife. You just survived severe physiological trauma.
Exactly. So how do we counter that?
Well, it is a perfectly reasonable defense mechanism for the materialist paradigm. I mean, if we were in a courtroom, that argument easily establishes reasonable doubt.
Sure, it makes logical sense on the surface.
It protects the foundational assumption that the brain is the sole generator of the mind. However, when we apply rigorous physiological timelines to this argument, it really begins to buckle.
How so?
Because a hallucination requires a functioning cerebral cortex.
Oh?
Yeah. It requires complex, integrated electrical activity to generate a narrative, imagery, and coherent memory. But in the clinical settings we just discussed, like that deep hypothermic circulatory arrest, we have continuous EEG monitoring showing absolutely zero electrical activity.
Flatline.
Flatline. The biological machinery required to produce a complex hallucination is objectively offline.
So the skeptic is looking at death like a light switch. You're either on or off, and if you come back to tell the tale, the switch never fully hit the bottom.
Right.
But the medical data is actually showing us that death is a dimmer switch. We are sliding people all the way down to the absolute lowest setting. The bulb is completely dark, no electricity is flowing.
Zero electricity.
And yet, in that total measurable darkness, the subjective experience isn't fading. It's actually becoming hyperlucid.
Exactly. And this forces an unavoidable confrontation with our underlying model of neurobiology. I mean, if the most vivid, coherent, and transformative experiences of a person's life occur when their brain is functionally disabled,
Then the brain isn't doing what we think it's doing.
precisely, the assumption that the brain produces consciousness is inherently flawed. We have to completely reconsider what the brain actually does.
Which brings us to a foundational concept in the research we are unpacking today. We essentially have to completely tear down the steam engine model of the brain and replace it with the dissociative filter model.
This is where it gets really fascinating.
It really does. And I want you listening to really internalize this, because once you grasp this flip, literally everything about how you experience the world changes.
It's a total paradigm shift.
So the steam engine model is basically what you were taught in high school biology. The brain is the mechanical engine, and consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings, your sense of self, is the scheme.
Right. It's just a byproduct of the engine's chemistry.
Exactly. If the engine stops running, the steam vanishes. Poof.
In philosophy, this is known as physicalism or emergentism. It's this idea that subjective experience somehow magically emerges from non-conscious physical matter when it's arranged in a sufficiently complex way.
Which, when you say it out loud, sounds kind of crazy.
It really is a bit of a leap of faith. But the alternative framework, which is deeply rooted in analytic idealism, suggests something radically different.
Okay, lay the filter model on us.
It posits that consciousness isn't the steam. Consciousness is the fundamental fabric of reality itself. It is a vast, interconnected, universal superset.
So it's everything.
Yes. And the biological brain does not generate this consciousness. Instead, the brain acts as a dissociative filter or a localized reducing valve.
A reducing valve.
Yeah.
Absolutely love this concept.
It makes so much more sense of the data.
It does. We walk around every day assuming our eyes and ears and brains are creating our reality. But this model argues our bodies are actually constricting reality.
Yes, exactly.
They are actively filtering out the infinite totality of the universe so that we can focus on immediate, local survival. Like you are wearing biological blinders so you don't get so overwhelmed by the infinite that you forget to eat breakfast.
Or forget to run away from a predator. Precisely. The brain is a localization mechanism. It takes the infinite field of awareness and dissociates a tiny fraction of it, tying it to a specific set of sensory inputs in space-time.
Okay, so how does this tie back into the near-death experiences?
Well, this filter model provides a profoundly elegant explanation for the phenomenon that gives materialist skeptics their absolute biggest headache.
Oh, veridical information.
Veridical data, yes.
This is the absolute crux of the debate right here, because we aren't just talking about people feeling a vague sense of peace.
No, not at all.
We are talking about highly specific, verifiable observations made by patients while they are completely flatlined.
It's undeniable data.
Like you have a patient whose eyes are taped shut, whose brain is electrically silent, and suddenly they're floating above their body and accurately observing the specific non-standard surgical instruments the doctor decided to use.
Or recalling the exact conversation the nurses had down the hall.
Yes, down the hall.
Mhm.
How does the steam engine explain that?
It can't. Under the steam engine model, veridical information is mechanically impossible. A broken machine cannot produce accurate external observations of the room.
It's just a broken machine.
Right. But if the brain is a filter, the logic perfectly aligns. When the biological organism undergoes extreme trauma, cardiac arrest, or oxygen deprivation, the dissociative boundaries of the filter begin to dissolve.
The localized aperture breaks down, the blindfold gets holes in it.
Exactly, the blind hole gets holes in it. And what rushes in is not a dying hallucination, but the broader, unconstrained reality that was always there. The local awareness reintegrates with the non-local environment.
Wow. This is why the primary universal word used by experiencers to describe the onset of clinical death is expansion. They aren't shrinking into nothingness.
They're expanding into everything.
Exactly.
Okay, but hold on. Let me push back hard on this filter idea because I know there's a really common critique here.
Sure, to hear it.
If consciousness is fundamental and my brain is just a filter, what happens when someone suffers a traumatic brain injury or, like, a severe stroke?
Right.
Because their personality fundamentally changes. Sometimes they lose their memory or their empathy or their ability to speak. If the raw consciousness inside is still perfectly fine and unconstrained, why does smashing the radio change the music?
That's a great question.
Shouldn't the music just get staticky rather than becoming a completely different song?
That is easily the most vital critique of the filter model, and it requires us to really understand what dissociation actually entails.
Okay, break it down. Think about the psychological condition of dissociative identity disorder, where a single mind fragments into multiple distinct personalities, often with their own memories and traits.
Right.
The universal consciousness is undergoing a similar dissociative process to create you. The physical brain is the localized interface. It's the literal boundary condition of your specific ego.
Okay, tracking.
So when you damage the physical brain, you aren't damaging the fundamental underlying consciousness, but you are severely corrupting the interface's ability to integrate with its environment.
Ah. So the localized person is literally a product of the filter itself.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The specific personality, the memory access, the cognitive processing, these are all localized tools managed by the biological filter.
Right.
If you damage the frontal lobe, you lose impulse control because the localized mechanism for impulse control is broken.
But the underlying awareness.
The underlying expanded awareness is completely untouched, but its expression through that specific biological aperture is altered. It's only when the biological aperture completely fails at death that the dissociation ends entirely, and the localized limitations dissolve back into the whole.
Okay, that makes so much sense. The stroke alters the spacesuit, not the astronaut inside.
Perfect analogy.
Which brings us to the next massive question. If the biological filter dropped entirely and this localized point of consciousness expands back into the macro reality, what exactly is the topography of that space?
Right. What does it actually look like?
Yeah. What are people actually experiencing out there? Because, I mean, our pop culture has a very specific map of the afterlife.
Oh, heavily conditioned by Hollywood.
And centuries of specific religious art. When most people think of a near-death experience, they think of moving through a dark tunnel, emerging into a bright light.
Maybe encountering a religious figure.
Yeah, and undergoing a rapid life review where they are judged.
Right. But the data we are examining deconstructs these tropes entirely. While these elements are frequently reported, they are not the universal objective reality of the expanded state.
So what are they?
They are transitional phenomena.
Okay, wait, explain that. Take the life review, for example.
Hmm.
In the movies, it's always framed as a judgment,
Yeah.
right? A cosmic courtroom where you watch your highlight reel and get a score.
Right, you pass or you fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources we're exploring frame it completely differently. It's described as what was the term? A data dump.
A data dump, which is a fascinating systems-level perspective.
It really is.
Think about it. If you are a localized probe of consciousness sent into a highly constrained biological environment to gather novel experiences, upon your return, that gathered data needs to be integrated back into the macro system.
So it's not a trial.
No, the life review isn't a moral judgment by some external deity. It is the subjective experience of your localized data synchronizing with the universal superset.
Wow.
You experience not only every action you took, but the exact emotional ripple of how your actions affected everyone around you. Because in the expanded state, the boundaries between you and them no longer exist.
Because the filter is gone.
Ex-
Okay, so that's the life review. What about the tunnel? Why does everyone see a tunnel?
The tunnel is simply a cognitive interpretation of a rapid change in state. As the dissociative filter dissolves, the shift from a highly constrained linear perspective into a non-local 360-degree reality is overwhelming.
So the brain or the localized mind is just trying to process it.
Yes. The localized mind interprets this rapid expansion of awareness as movement through a conduit toward a source of illumination.
Okay, but if the tunnel and the life review are just mechanics of the transition, what is the actual destination? Like when the dust settles, what is there?
According to the vast aggregation of these accounts, once the transition is complete, the absolute inescapable foundation of the experience is an overwhelming structural reality of unconditional interconnectedness.
Unconditional interconnectedness, or to use the word that makes the scientific community deeply uncomfortable.
Unconditional love.
Unconditional love.
It is the unifying denominator across nearly all profound NDEs, regardless of the experiencer's cultural background, age, or prior beliefs.
Which is pretty staggering.
It is. And we really must be incredibly precise with our language here because the materialist, physicalist philosophy has trivialized the concept of love.
Felt completely. In the dominant scientific view, love is nothing more than an evolutionary utility, right?
Right. It's a localized neurochemical cocktail.
Yeah.
Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin,
Just chemicals.
designed to enforce kin selection, pair bonding, and the protection of offspring. It is a biological trick to ensure the replication of DNA.
Right, in the materialist view, you're basically just a highly complex biological automaton following chemical pheromones.
Mm-hmm.
Love is just the word we invented to describe the urge to keep our genetic lineage alive.
That's the standard model.
But the data from these expanded states challenges that so profoundly. The sources highlight this incredible jarring phenomenon to illustrate this, and I just found this so moving.
Oh, the accounts from the veterans?
Yes. You read these accounts of hardened, deeply pragmatic individuals. We're talking combat veterans, roughneck oil rig workers, mechanics, people who have spent their entire lives operating strictly within physical, survival-based parameters.
Not exactly your typical mystic.
Not at all. And decades after their near-death experience, they will literally break down in absolute uncontrollable tears,
Yeah.
just trying to articulate the gravity of this interconnectedness.
It completely shatters their earthly, localized logic.
It does.
Because what they are experiencing isn't a chemical flush. It is the fundamental binding force of reality. In the expanded state, love is not a biological imperative. It is the ontological gravity of consciousness.
Gravity of consciousness. That is such a heavy phrase.
The structural force that pulls the disparate, dissociated fragments of reality back into the unified whole. The reason it feels so overwhelmingly euphoric is because the tension of localization, the exhausting effort of maintaining a separate, isolated identity is finally released.
You can just let go. But here is where it gets incredibly tricky for a lot of people. Because if the ultimate reality is this unbranded, universal interconnectedness, why do people come back claiming they explicitly met Jesus or the Buddha or like specific culturally identifiable angels?
Right, the religious figures.
Doesn't that contradict the idea of a universal superset and, I don't know, prove that human religions are objectively real?
Well, the analytical framework addresses this by warning against extreme anthropocentrism.
Okay, unpack that word.
Human beings have this ingrained hubristic tendency to assume that the mythologies we developed over the last few thousand years on this specific rock are the objective, literal governing structures of a multi-billion-year-old cosmos.
Yeah, the idea that a local earthly deity from a specific Bronze Age text is the literal objective ruler of a multidimensional multiverse is, well, it's highly improbable if we're being logically rigorous.
It's a bit of a stretch.
So why are people seeing them when they flatline?
Because the underlying mental universe uses these familiar archetypes as a transitional user interface.
The UI.
Yes. The dissolution of the biological filter is an unimaginably radical shift. You are moving from a state of dense, localized limitation into infinite, non-local awareness.
Which would be terrifying.
Exactly.
Well.
To prevent absolute ontological shock, to keep the transitioning consciousness from complete panic, the broader system generates imagery that is deeply resonant and comforting to the specific life just lived.
Wow. So it's the universe speaking to you in a dialect you can comprehend.
Precisely.
If you're a devout Christian, the geometry of unconditional love might manifest to you as Jesus, because that is your localized symbol for ultimate salvation.
And if you are a Hindu, it might manifest as Krishna.
It's like a transitional blanket. The archetypes are profoundly real in their utility and their emotional truth, but they aren't the objective ceiling of reality. They are the lobby, not the entire building.
That is a perfect way to put it. And this realization requires us to delve into arguably the most unsettling and liberating concept in this entire philosophy,
That's just...
the nature of identity.
Oh boy.
Because if our religious affiliations, our cultural backgrounds, and our physical forms are just transitional UI, then who or what are we?
Right. When the filter is completely gone, what happens to the you that you identify as right now?
Exactly.
Man, this is the part of the research that really required me to completely step out of my own ego, because we are so obsessively attached to our identities.
Oh, fiercely attached.
Think about the identity you are wearing right now as you listen to this. Your job title, your childhood memories, your specific anxieties, your name. We spend our entire lives building this construct, defending it, arguing about it on the internet.
It's exhausting.
But the framework we are exploring posits that this identity, the ego, is not fundamental at all.
No, it's not.
It is highly plastic, completely mutable, and strictly temporary.
To really understand this, we need to look at the mechanics of the localized brain itself, specifically the functional divide between the left and right hemispheres.
Okay, the left brain, right brain stuff.
Right. Now, obviously, this is a metaphorical mapping, but it is highly illustrative. The ego, your localized identity, operates predominantly like the left hemisphere.
Okay.
It is pragmatic, it's categorical, and it's highly structured. Its primary function is to divide a holistic world into distinct, manageable, survivable pieces. It creates a narrative of me versus the environment.
It's the part of you that knows how to file taxes, remember your home address, and avoid walking into moving traffic.
Exactly. It is a necessary survival algorithm.
And the analogy from the notes that just perfectly crystallizes this is the spacesuit.
Ah, yes.
If you, as an astronaut, want to step out of your ship and navigate the hostile vacuum of space, you cannot do it in your natural state.
To die instantly.
You must put on a highly engineered, deeply restrictive spacesuit. That suit limits your vision, it restricts your movement, and it parameterizes your interaction with the environment.
Right.
But without it, you literally can't survive the gravity and the vacuum.
And your current identity, your ego, is exactly that. It is a localized, highly utilitarian spacesuit designed specifically to navigate these precise space-time coordinates on Earth.
But the critical error we make is confusing the spacesuit for the astronaut.
Yes. We think the temporary survival algorithm is our fundamental essence.
So if the ego is just the suit, who is the astronaut?
The sources define the astronaut as the deeper resonant signature.
Resonant signature.
Yes. If the ego is the left brain categorizing and dividing, the resonant signature correlates more with the right hemisphere. Expansive, non-categorical, intimately interconnected with the whole.
Okay.
This resonant signature is the deeper continuity of consciousness. When the physical body dies, The specific daily identity, the left brain algorithmic narrative,
It
dissolves.
just drops away.
But the accumulated data, the evolutionary progress, the wisdom gained through that localized experience is integrated into the deeper resonant signature.
So, to put it bluntly, you aren't permanently going to be John from accounting for all of eternity.
No, definitely not.
John from accounting was just the highly specialized spacesuit you wore for an 80-year mission to Earth. When the mission is over, the John from accounting suit goes back in the locker.
Yeah, exact.
The data John collected is saved, but the rigid parameters of John dissolve. The deeper resonant signature of the astronaut moves on, carrying the essence of the experience forward.
Yes, and fully grasping the mutable, temporary nature of the localized ego is the crucial prerequisite for tackling the grand paradox we introduced at the very beginning of this deep dive.
Okay, here we go. The big question.
The crux of the entire inquiry.
All right. We have established, through vast data sets and the filter model, that the ultimate unconstrained state of consciousness is characterized by infinite, unconditional, expansive love and absolute interconnectedness.
We have.
And we have established that human life is a localized, heavily parameterized, highly restricted descent into a wet, cold, small meat body.
Right.
So
So,
why?
the million-dollar question.
Literally. If the astronaut's true state is total bliss, infinite power, and unconstrained freedom, what is the incentive to ever put the heavy, suffocating spacesuit back on? Why deliberately choose to enter a domain characterized by pain, grief, linear time, and limitation?
I mean, it seems utterly masochistic from our current vantage point.
Totally.
But to solve this paradox, we have to undergo a radical shift in our perspective regarding two fundamental concepts: time and risk.
Okay, time and risk.
As long as you are evaluating a human life from within the localized filter of a human life, it appears unbearably long and burdened with catastrophic risk.
Right. Because from down here, in the gravity well, an 80-year lifespan filled with mortgages, illnesses, heartbreaks, and eventual physical decay sounds terrifying.
It's a lot to handle.
The idea of an infinite being volunteering for this sounds like absolute madness.
But you have to shift your vantage point to the expanded state. If you are operating as a non-biological, non-local resonant signature, your relationship to time is completely fluid.
Time isn't a straight line anymore.
Right. Time is not a linear march of decay. It is simply another dimension of experience. If you have been resting in a state of unconditional love, total completion, and absolute safety for the equivalent of millions of years, an 80-year plunge into a biological human lifespan does not feel like an agonizing slog.
It's a microscopic fraction of a second. It's a momentary blink.
Exactly.
The sources use this incredible thought experiment that just perfectly shattered my localized bias. It's the VR ant scenario.
Oh, this is a great one.
So, imagine for a moment that you are an immortal being. You possess infinite power, you are perfectly safe, and you exist in a state of euphoric peace.
Okay.
And, with absolute unshakable certainty that you cannot be destroyed or fundamentally harmed. Now imagine someone hands you a virtual reality headset and says, hey, do you want to see what it feels like to be a worker ant for a couple of weeks?
From the perspective of the immortal, unconstrained being, putting on that VR headset is not a catastrophic risk. It isn't terrifying. Because no matter what happens to the ant within the simulation, even if the ant is crushed by a shoe or starves or suffers, the immortal being knows that the moment the simulation ends, they will simply take off the headset and return to their fundamental state of safety.
The core continuity of consciousness is never truly threatened. The transition is unharmed.
Exactly.
Okay, but I have to push back on this.
Yeah.
Because it's the hardest pill to swallow for a lot of people.
That's fair.
A VR game is supposed to be fun. Human life involves deep, catastrophic suffering. We're talking about profound grief, systemic cruelty, terminal illness. Why would a blissful, immortal entity choose to play a trauma simulator?
It's a heavy question.
If it's perfectly safe in the macro, why choose to experience the micro horror at all?
Because of the universe's inherent drive for novelty, differentiation, and transformation.
Oh yeah, novelty.
The research frames this as a kind of fundamental entropy of experiential reality. The phrase used in the sources is scrambling the egg.
Scrambling the egg.
Yes. A state of infinite static bliss while euphoric is ultimately uniform. It lacks contrast. It lacks the friction required for evolution.
It's boring.
Basically, yes. The universal consciousness doesn't want to remain a static monolith of peace. It wants to explore every conceivable permutation of its own potential. It wants to generate new flavors of experience.
So the suffering, the limitation, the gravity, that is the point of the simulation.
It's the only way to get the contrast.
You can't experience the triumph of overcoming fear if you never experience fear. You can't understand the profound depth of human compassion if you never experience fragility.
Exactly.
The universe wants to know what it feels like to be blind, to be limited, to hurt, because that is the only way to experience the incredibly unique contrast of localized existence.
Yes. Humanity, as normal and mundane as it feels to us, is actually a deeply weird, highly derived outcome of billions of years of biological evolution.
We view our daily lives as mundane, but from a cosmic perspective, a human life is an incredibly exotic, highly differentiated structural reality.
And the universe is likely teeming with these environments.
Right, the scale is just mind-blowing.
The sources speculate on the sheer scale of this evolutionary project. I mean, if consciousness is fundamental, and it is driving the evolution of matter to create more complex filters, then the cosmos is essentially an engine of differentiation.
Wow.
If even a fraction of a percent of galaxies hold complex biological life, there are billions of intelligent species, not to mention the infinite varieties of non-intelligent ecosystems.
Every single one of them is a different VR headset,
A different spacesuit.
a different spacesuit with a different set of highly specific parameters, a different way for the infinite to experience localized challenge and separation.
Yes.
The universe is putting on billions of headsets simultaneously. It wants to feel the weight of gravity on Earth. It wants to feel the localized drama of a Tuesday morning commute.
It wants the urgency of linear time.
It's the ultimate immersive theater, and we are the localized probes gathering that highly specific data.
And this connects perfectly back to the concept of the resonant signature. The deeper architecture of consciousness is moving through a massive long-term evolutionary project. It is accumulating the data of infinite differentiation.
Right?
The incentive to enter the meat body is not driven by the localized ego, because the ego doesn't even exist until the suit is put on.
Oh, that's a great point.
The incentive is driven by the macro totality's desire to serve the expansion and enrichment of the whole through diverse, constrained experiences.
Okay, this is undeniably mind-blowing on a cosmic philosophical scale.
It really is.
But we have to bring this all the way down to Earth.
Yeah.
Because diving into billions of intelligent species and the topography of the afterlife is fascinating. But what does this actually mean for you, the person listening to this right now, as you drive to work or fold your laundry?
Right. How do we apply this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How does knowing that you are an infinite consciousness taking a brief VR vacation in a meat body change how you live today?
Well, the most immediate and profound takeaway from this entire framework is that you do not have to wait for the rigid, materialist, scientific establishment to validate this philosophy before you start living it.
You don't need their permission.
Exactly. In fact, the sources explicitly point out that waiting for external validation from the dominant paradigm is a trap.
Yeah.
There is a deep tragedy, and frankly a bit of comedy, in observing scientists or academics who have realized these truths through their own research or experiences, but who remain bound by the need for social conformity.
Yeah, the research talks about these brilliant individuals who get a glimpse of this infinite, unconditional love, and then they immediately panic because the materialist academic establishment dismisses them as crazy.
They desperately want to maintain their status.
Right. So they start talking faster, rambling, throwing out chaotic statistics to prove the unprovable, and in the process, they just look even more unhinged to their peers.
It reveals a profound insecurity. I mean, they have touched the infinite, yet they are still desperately seeking the approval of the localized filter.
That's so backwards.
But the liberating realization of this deep dive is that social uniformity, peer approval, and the rigid mythoses of human society are essentially irrelevant on a fundamental level.
Irrelevant.
They have pragmatic utility for coordinating large groups of biological organisms. You know, they help us build roads and maintain economies, but they do not define ultimate reality.
Which means you can stop desperately trying to fit into the uniform.
Yes.
You don't need the world or your boss or the scientific community to agree with you to access this state of peace. The notes are very clear on this. You can explore this feeling of interconnectedness, this unconstrained love right now.
You don't have to flatline to tap into your resonant signature.
Exactly. You can practice thinning the filter through meditation, through deep presence, through letting go of the localized anxieties.
And this leads to the ultimate practical application of everything we've discussed today. The realization of your intrinsic worth.
Intrinsic worth.
Yes. If the materialist steam engine view is correct, your worth is tied solely to your biological productivity, your social status, and your economic output.
You are just a cog in the machine.
You are just a temporary arrangement of matter competing for resources, and when you die, you are zero.
Bleak.
Very. But if the dissociative filter model is correct, your self-worth is entirely decoupled from the matter that makes up your body.
This is the paradigm shift right here.
Yeah.
Your intrinsic worth is exactly the same as the intrinsic worth of the entire universe.
Yeah.
Because you are the universe.
Exactly.
You're the universe looking at itself, temporarily wearing a localized spacesuit to experience the novelty of being you, which means you don't have to take the drama of your life quite so personally.
Right. You are a crucial data point of novelty. The universe specifically desires the exact, highly specific experience of your life, but your core, fundamental self is entirely safe.
The VR game might be intense, it might be painful, but the astronaut is unharmed.
Unharmed. Understanding this allows you to relax. It allows you to feel the flow of the localized experience without being absolutely crushed by the weight of it.
It allows you to engage with the world playfully, rather than operating in the state of chronic existential terror. You can appreciate the bizarre, highly differentiated nature of being a human, knowing it is a temporary, deeply purposeful plunge into limitation.
So, to synthesize this profound journey we've taken today,
Let's do it.
we began by examining how modern medical resuscitation is unintentionally mapping a new frontier of consciousness, pushing past the simplistic binary of clinical death.
Right, the dimmer switch.
We explored how the resulting veridical data forces us to abandon the steam engine model of the brain in favor of the dissociative filter, revealing that our brains do not create reality, they restrict it.
And from there, we navigated the topography of the expanded state, realizing that the tunnel and the archetypes are just transitional UI, easing us into the fundamental structural reality of unconditional interconnectedness.
And finally, we confronted the grand paradox, realizing that our restrictive, burdensome human lives are not a cosmic punishment or a random biological accident.
No.
They are brief, intentional dives into novelty, sought out by a universe that is hungry for the contrast of limitation.
It completely revolutionizes the context of human existence. The muddy, chaotic waters of our subjective experience are not a glitch in a biological machine. They are the ocean of infinite consciousness itself, temporarily leaking through a highly specialized filter.
It's beautiful, really.
It is. Which brings us back to that physical body. If the materialist view is right, your physical body is all you are, just dense matter slowly breaking down until the lights shut off forever.
But if the robust logical framework we explored today is correct,
that physical body is just a schematic of the temporary spacesuit you're currently wearing for this specific mission.
and the mission is simply to experience the limitation.
So I will leave you, the listener, with this final provocative thought. If your current identity, your ego, your entire life story with all its drama and pain and joy is just a highly specialized spaceship designed for this exact coordinate in space-time.
What happens if you stop violently fighting the constraints of the ship?
Exactly. What happens if you let go of the controls for just a second, stop panicking about the destination, and just enjoy the incredibly unique view out the window while the ride lasts?
That is the ultimate invitation of the human experience.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next one.